Hello and welcome to the show that fights for freedom and democracy, the show that stands up for the left behind, the show that fights against fake news and the complacent establishment. Right, we're releasing the video early today at 5 p.m. We have a couple hours to go to the most important votes that we've had in the last few months. Tonight is the night. Tonight is the night when we know if we're going to have Brexit by the end of October, or if we're going to have a general election, or a semi-chance of having a no-deal Brexit, because it's all down to the EU. In terms of the no-deal stuff, obviously, because it's not up to us, we probably won't find out until towards the end of this week or early next week what the EU would do. But basically, in this video, we're going to talk about what's happening in Parliament tonight and what it could kind of result into tomorrow. And we'll also talk about a few of the kind of fake news and misinformation that's going around about this Brexit deal, and also why this Brexit bill is actually becoming even more difficult than it was supposed to. First, let's start with the bill. Obviously, as we saw last night, as predicted, John Bercow, the Speaker of the House, turned down the meaningful vote for the Brexit votes, and Boris Johnson skipped that, and today he tabled the Brexit Withdrawal Agreement bill, which is the actual legislation. Now, later on, obviously, throughout the whole day, the Labour MPs have been complaining because they say government is pushing through this and they're only giving us a few days, 3 days to read the bill and basically debate on it. Firstly, this bill has only 110 pages. Secondly, most of the details, they've already read it. They've had 3 years to debate this. They've debated all the various issues relating to this withdrawal agreement. And the changes that's been made are kind of, I would say, tiny compared to what we had before anyway. And but they say, well, we don't have enough time. Whereas in reality, it takes about 2 hours, even if you're a slow reader, to actually read this bill. So because of that, there are two things that's going to be happening tonight. And this is the one area that I can't predict if you're watching this video after the vote has actually happened. So two things could happen. The first vote is going to be on the actual second reading of the bill, to approve it, to start the process to go to the committee stage and the House of Lords, and actually come back and we basically vote on it in the House of Commons. The second important vote is on the actual programme motion. This is the timetable for the bill. Now, Boris Johnson seems to have the numbers for the first vote, for the actual bill, which is fine. But it's quite difficult to guess if the government have the numbers for the programme motion. It's 50-50, no one knows. They say it's about 3 to 4 votes that could go either way. And so you never know. They might actually win it and they might not. If the government wins that, obviously we're going to go through the timetable. They're going to go through this in the next 3 days and then pass the deal, and we'll leave on the 31st of October. If the government fail, then the Downing Street have said that they're going to pull the vote and then call the election. And if the EU gives a Brexit extension, and then basically after a few weeks after the election, Boris Johnson will get a majority, and then he will just leave the EU instantly. Now, the issue is that the European Union have said we're not going to give an extension unless there is a good reason. And actually, they've said, if there's a second referendum or an election, we would give an extension. So if Boris Johnson fails tonight and calls an election, then that would give a good reason to the European Union to extend Brexit short term until Boris gets a majority, and then pass the deal or leave without a deal, whatever they want to do afterwards. Now, the second thing is, let's just say the programme motion is actually kind of passed, or somehow we are in the process of this bill. There are 3 amendments that are going to be added to this bill anyway. One is the customs union. The Labour politicians want the UK to remain in the customs union even after we leave the EU. The second one is to have a second referendum even after we basically pass this deal. And the third one is to, when the transition period starts on the 1st of November, they want us to be able to extend that if at the end of December 2020. They want to be able to extend that, and this is also another issue for the government. Now, none of them are actually real threats because, for example, the customs union. Let's have a look at the actual wording of this amendment. This is the amendment written by Ken Clarke. It says, "It shall be an objective of the government to secure an agreement within the framework of the future relationship of the UK and the EU to a comprehensive and permanent customs union for the whole of the UK with the EU before the end of the implementation period." Now, the issue with this is that everyone was afraid initially when they mentioned this amendment, but actually this amendment is not going to be touching or changing the withdrawal agreement, which means that the government could say, fine, vote for it, and then after we leave, call an election, get a majority, and just cancel the amendment. Easy. Now, the other issue with this amendment is that the numbers don't really add up for Ken Clarke, because if all Labour MPs, except for Mann, Hoey and Stringer, and all the Change UK, Norman Lamb, Herman, and all the former Tory and former Labour independents, except for Frank Field, all vote for it, it still comes to 315, and that's 5 short of a majority. And obviously, if the DUP abstain, then it would pass by 1, but the DUP have said that they would vote against it. So that's not really a problem. The second one is to extend the transition period, and that's by Nick Boles. Nick Boles' amendment basically puts pressure on the government to reach a trade deal agreement with the European Union by 2020, and if that doesn't happen, then on the 1st of June 2020, they have to essentially ask for an extension of the implementation period. Now, this one also, if Boris manages to get Brexit done, call an election, get a majority, he could just cancel this one as well. And the last amendment is Labour's second referendum, which is endorsed by Keir Starmer. Again, the issue with the second referendum is that even if Parliament passes a motion for this, it's up to the government. The government controls the budget and the treasury. And if the government doesn't provide the monetary resources and the actual timetable, well, referendum is not going to happen. But all this goes back to the incompetence of the Labour Remainer MPs, because, for example, yesterday when the government were about to table the publication of the withdrawal agreement bill, Jeremy Corbyn stood up at the dispatch box and did an urgent question, which wasted the time in the House. And then the urgent question was to basically ask for a publication of the withdrawal agreement bill, which the government was going to do anyway. So basically, Jeremy Corbyn just wasted an hour asking a very unnecessary question.
The Prime Minister to make a statement on the publication of the European Union Withdrawal Agreement Bill and his letter of the 19th of October to the European Council seeking an extension to the period provided under Article 50.
The Secretary of State for exiting the European Union, Secretary Stephen Barclay.
Mr. Speaker, notice of the withdrawal agreement bill was given to the House on Saturday. The bill was handed to the House yesterday as agreed with the House authorities. It will be introduced for first reading at the start of main business today. The publication of the withdrawal agreement bill is therefore now being delayed by the Leader of the Opposition, because he has tabled an urgent question requesting the publication of the withdrawal agreement bill. Genius.
But going back to the EU, the chief negotiator Michel Barnier has said that no more renegotiations, whatever happens in Westminster. He said that if Britain wants an ordinary exit, which is far better than a disorderly exit, then this is the only possible agreement. And Downing Street have actually confirmed that if the programme motion, which is based on the timetable of the bill, if that fails tonight, again, most of you, when you're watching this, that's already happened because that will be around 7 o'clock, then the government will pull the vote and then call an election and ask the EU to give a short extension so that the government could get a majority and then pass the bill. Now, this is a scenario that I mentioned a number of times over the last few weeks, where Boris Johnson obviously has promised to get Brexit done by the end of October, and the only scenario where there could be a delay and he basically fails is if it's basically not his fault, if it's really the Remain Parliament blocking the vote, and this could happen tonight. And but again, it goes back to the EU. I mean, the EU have said that yes, if you want to call an election, we will give you an extension. But if one country goes crazy, then obviously we will leave without a deal. But that goes back to the whole point of no deal Brexit. A lot of people are asking, saying, "Oh, why can't we just leave on WTO terms and no deal? What is this? What's with the deal that Boris has presented?" Well, because it's not up to Boris Johnson. Boris doesn't have the power to deliver no deal Brexit because he doesn't have a majority in his government. The Remain Parliament are in charge, and it's also up to the European Union. So this is the situation, and the beauty of this whole thing is that Brexit is inevitable now. It's actually going to be happening. So whether it's by passing this legislation and this bill this week, or if the programme motion fails later tonight, then he will call an election, he will easily get a majority government, and he will get Brexit done. Then Parliament can't stop him anymore. So Brexit is happening anyway. It's just a matter of timing. But going back to the misinformation and fake news going around, there's a lot of issues with this current Brexit deal. It's a compromise. It's not perfect, obviously. I myself, as I've said so many times, I'm a WTO Brexiteer. I prefer to leave without a deal. But this is the kind of the deal we have, and you could make a lot of changes afterwards when it comes to a future relationship. But we had a tweet from the Brexit Party. The Brexit Party has said that the new deal means that we will be permanently committed to a treaty that prevents independent military action or any action likely to conflict with or impede the EU foreign policy. Now, the two main points that some Brexiteers keep complaining about is when it comes to our UK defence and foreign policy, and also fisheries. And we're going to address this once again because I've mentioned this in so many videos and people keep leaving the same comments over and over again. Firstly, that specific point about UK defence, there is literally the paragraph 0.6 in the withdrawal agreement actually mentions that it's not true. Following a decision of the Council falling under Chapter 2 of Title 5 TEU, the United Kingdom may make a formal declaration to the High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, indicating that for vital and stated reasons of national policy, in those exceptional cases it will not apply the decision. In a spirit of mutual solidarity, the United Kingdom shall refrain from any action likely to conflict with or impede Union action based on that decision, and the Member State shall respect the position of the United Kingdom. That means the United Kingdom will have the independence, and the EU can't really force us to do something that we don't want. But the agreement allows us, if we want to voluntarily get involved, then yes, we can. And that gives the leeway. For example, obviously, if Jeremy Corbyn becomes Prime Minister and if he wants to align us with the EU defence policy, then he can do that. But if Boris wins the election and doesn't want to do it, and I know that he doesn't, then the EU can't really force it. And Boris Johnson has clarified this in Parliament.
Could I invite the Prime Minister to confirm the UK will retain its own sovereign military capability as outlined in para 92 and 99 of the Political Declaration, and not be committed to any EU mission, military initiative or procurement project unless we do so voluntarily.
Prime Minister. I'm very grateful to my right honourable friend, and he alludes to an important change that we've been able to secure in the course of the negotiations, and he is absolutely right that full independence will be retained in that vital sphere of defence and security. I'm grateful to him for drawing.
And the second one is fisheries. Again, I've mentioned this in a lot of videos about the Scottish Federation actually confirming our fisheries that we will be independent. All this fear-mongering is just ridiculous now. Boris Johnson also confirmed this on the legal basis of it in Parliament.
Will he give the House a categorical assurance that we will not make the mistake of the 1970s and use our marine resources and fish stocks to be traded as a bargaining chip during the upcoming negotiations? Will he guarantee that we will take total 100% control of all our waters within the EEZ and all our resources, and like any other independent marine nation, will then indulge in common sense negotiations of a reciprocal nature with our marine neighbours on an annual basis?
Prime Minister. I can happily give my right honourable friend, who has campaigned long on these issues valiantly, that assurance, Mr. Speaker, and I can confirm that we will take back 100% control of the spectacular marine wealth of this country, not least the marine wealth of Scotland, which the SNP would discard as senselessly as superfluous catch dictated by the common fisheries policy itself.
Now, hopefully this helps clarify a lot of issues that people have with misinformation and fake news going around social media. Now, by the time most of you are watching this, we now know what's happening in Parliament. So obviously I'm going to do a follow-up video tomorrow at 5:45 p.m. to see where we are with Brexit. So make sure that if you want to stay up to date with kind of the Brexit news and everything, make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram and everything else. As I've said, Brexit is inevitable. It's just a matter of timing. Especially if the election is coming up, obviously the Conservatives are leading in the polls, and so that means they're going to win the election. So the moment that happens, then and the government actually starts their program, then Brexit will happen instantly afterwards. So make sure that you get your Brexit t-shirts and merchandise. You can find the link in the description as always. And don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell next to it so you get notified when I release a new video. And as always, I'm Tousi, and I'll see you tomorrow with a new video.